Welcome to Faith Over Breakfast. You are listening to a podcast by Pastor Eric Siepen and Pastor Andy Littleton. If you enjoy Faith Over Breakfast, we encourage you to rate it on the Apple Podcast app, on Spotify, or Google Play. Thank you and enjoy the podcast.
Welcome to Faith Over Breakfast. My name is Andy Littleton from Mission Church in Tucson, Arizona, and I'm sitting with Eric Siepen from The Village.
Yeah, from The Village. Woohoo.
The OG Village.
From the opulent studios of
Opulent Village Studios.
Yeah.
Speaking of OGs, we're talking about Tupac. So and that's as it often goes. Somehow this ends up becoming about hermeneutics and Bible study, but we do pass through some discussions about story and the role of story in our lives. Victor Wembanyama of the San Antonio Spurs gets some airtime.
Yeah.
The movie Breach. Do you wonder how that happens? Of course you do. You better listen.
Right, Faith Over Breakfast, man. This is how I would have a conversation with you. It'd just be slightly less formal.
Yeah, slightly. We would move more.
Yeah. A lot more fidgeting.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what it is. Enjoy.
Andy is the only one that comes and messes with this. Microphones.
Yeah, I like the rubber band to actually be attached.
You do, especially...
I mean, it's there for a reason.
Yeah.
It's trying to keep the microphone from hitting the metal and sounding like garbage.
Yeah.
That matters to me.
And it's important. That's good. It's good that so many podcasts are so bad, even the ones that make tons of money. I listen to them and I'm like, if they just had the rubber bands better.
Well, and I say they probably have them, but they just aren't even attached.
Yeah, they're just sitting next to the microphone.
Yeah, they're just dangling, and why not put them on there?
Danglers.
Or is that just us? I think that's just here, Eric.
Yeah, we're the only podcast. I will tell you you get maybe other feedback if anybody ever talks to you. I get, a little bit about how they enjoy this podcast, but one of the major feedbacks that's positive is people tell me, I love listening to your podcast because the sound is so much better than all the other podcasts I listen to. I hear that a lot. So, and it's mostly because of Andy's rubber band adjustments.
Well, if I hadn't done that, or if I didn't tell you to get your phone off the table so it didn't buzz, look at that. You don't even have it on there.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
Yeah. It's been a while. Huh,
yeah.
Andy?
So before we get in,
this bantering has been brought to you by...
You could tell the difference between two men based on whether or not they have their keys on a tabletop or not. So you're a tabletop keys guy. You must. I mean, they're on the table right now.
I'm any surface key guy. I lose them very quickly.
I was going to ask, do you tend to lose your keys?
Yes.
Have you ever considered that you have 4 pockets in your pants?
It makes me very uncomfortable to have anything in my pockets, really.
Okay.
Stupid pockets.
Okay. Well, you've got the carabiner on there. Have you ever considered you've got like 6 to 8 loops on your pants that you could attach that to, and then they'd be attached to you and you wouldn't have... I'm just wondering if you've thought about this. This has ever been brought up in your loving community of the village.
No. It's just funny because now the other pastors have started to lose things.
Oh, you're influencing them.
That or just baby brain, whichever
that too.
Those two things.
Yeah. I didn't know if anybody ever brought this up.
Yeah, and I trust Andy to really kind of go after the meaningful things in my life.
That's right. So somebody's got to do it.
Somebody does. It's good to have you back, Andy.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that.
I was afraid, I was gonna have to go hire a new Faith Over Breakfast partner.
Well,
the going rate is
competitive.
Yeah, I mean, you're a holdout. Like the demand for the green M&Ms is a little difficult, but we got it. So
okay,
here you are.
Well, so many topics have been discussed in our text message, but then many podcasts have not been done because of various things.
Weddings.
I was on it. I fully planned to be here last week, and I was doing colonoscopy prep, and my wife was like, "Are you crazy?" And here's the deal: you would have had to have done some editing, but if it hadn't have been for her, I would have been here.
Yeah.
And I would have done a podcast. I just would have had to have stepped out several times.
There would have been pauses.
And
I just would have put them together.
Yeah. I also went to lunch 15 minutes after I got done, and I kept that appointment.
Oh, good job.
And she was like, "What are you thinking?" And I was like, "Well, I'm going to be hungry. I might as well talk to somebody."
Yeah. You want to make it worth their while.
And I'll tell you what, honestly, the before colonoscopy thing would have been more comfortable than going to the lunch.
Oh.
This is a PSA for those who haven't entered into this stage of life. Because the air gets in your intestine. Yeah. And so it was, now I can't hear myself. What have you done to me?
I turned you down.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. And so you're eating, you haven't eaten, you're kind of, there's a little soreness, but there's all this air. And so I'm sitting in BJ's brew house with this guy, and I got like a chicken quinoa bowl. I thought it seemed pretty safe. And all I'm thinking is I want to fart, and I'm a little sore. Like those were the two big themes. What did we talk about?
How long did that last?
The afternoon.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I got through it, did fine, but it was uncomfortable. So I would have been more comfortable. Actually, during the whole pre-colonoscopy thing, Eric, I felt great.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
So, are you glad to hear that?
Yeah, no, I'm happy. We've
so there's topic 1.
Colonoscopy. Boom, done. All right,
Boom,
moving on to the next one. All right.
We've discussed talking about some other things. Most of these I think deserve an episode, but you've been really excited to talk about Tupac.
Well, here's the weird thing is I at first was like, okay, Tupac. Then I prepped for Tupac, and Hamas invaded Israel.
And we did talk about that.
So we talked about that. And then we were going to talk about Tupac, and then you were doing other weddings and then colonoscopies. And so I haven't done a refresher of my prep work for Tupac because I really don't like rap, and I'm not into that much. So, and I don't follow the inner workings of it all.
Yeah.
Like some people do, so I don't really know what was too much. So I had to go review, and I can probably grab it out of the recesses of my brain if you wish to talk about it a little bit.
Well, hey, like I said, we've talked about...
Well, let me ask you, why is Tupac important to you?
Well, yeah. Thanks for asking, Eric. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, let's go there. I will be the interviewer today, and we will...
Well, okay, so for me, as a young... tale as old as time. As a young private school white boy from the desert,
Sorry, continue.
Yeah, I was listening to a lot of country music on tapes. I definitely had. I'm trying to remember. I had some John Michael Montgomery and some Neil McCoy, and these were the slightly neo country tapes that I got to. I would listen to country music in the car with my dad, and I was like, "Ooh, these are a little better. This is a little like newer,
Neo, yes.
Yeah,
a little neo.
And so I was in that vein, and in middle school, I think somewhere in there, my mom wanted me to listen to Christian music and got me the Newsboys and stuff. This sort of was my repertoire, right?
Right.
And then one day, this kid, and I remember him well. His name was Vince. And this kid Vince was like, "Hey, check this out!" And he's got a Discman, which I did not have yet.
All right.
So I'm in tapes.
You're in tapes.
He's got a Discman because we go to private school, and most of the kids had more money than my family.
Right.
And he puts it on my head, and it was The Chronic by Dr. Dre.
Okay.
And I was like, first, just like, what is that? But then it was very alluring. There was the rhythms, the beats, the bad words, the
raw masculinity. It's present.
It's present. It's real present.
Yeah.
And sexual content, it's like, whoa, wow, what in the world?
Sure.
And so The Chronic. And then my family and I, we stopped at a sports card store on a vacation not long after, and they had some CDs in a case. And the great thing about having older parents, as I did, was that they were utterly clueless about, or at least I think they were, about the new music. They were worried about, my mom was like, I love Moon River. And, she was generations behind where my peers' friends, she had no idea about The Chronic or Tupac or Snoop Dogg.
Right.
So there were a couple CDs. There was the Above the Rim soundtrack, and then one of maybe the most vulgar albums ever made. I'm not even going to let you know what it is, Eric, because it might draw you in. Okay. It has that kind of power. And I didn't know what these were. I just saw these CDs in a stack, and I knew they were rap, and I was intrigued. So they were cheap, they were used, and I now had a Discman, and I bought these, and my parents had no. They were just like, okay, what's that? And I'm listening on my little Discman in the back seat, going, "Oh, what in the world?"
Right.
Again, white boy from the desert. So, then. The first time I heard Tupac was in the back of an Isuzu Amigo, or was it a Trooper? It was a Trooper, that belonged to my friend's mom. And I'll tell you what, I'd gotten into the sound of rap. Something about it had kind of grabbed me. But he was like, have you heard the new Tupac album? And I didn't know who Tupac was. And put the headphones on, and it was different. And I'll tell you, actually, at that point, it didn't hit me like those other albums did. It wasn't the grotesque, like, vulgarity. It wasn't just the, like, rampant drug use. It was, like, actually felt powerful, like, but in a way of, like, this guy sounds like he's, the language is a little off color or whatever, but he sounds like he's really speaking about things that matter. And that was the album Me Against the World, which continues to be one of my favorite albums to this day. And yeah, it was different. It didn't fit those categories. And so the first rap song I let my mother hear, to let her know, I kind of was like, by the way, I'm a rap listener. It's like you're coming out of the closet. It was
brother.
Coming out of the urban closet.
Yes.
For a white boy from the desert. But I showed her Dear Mama, of course.
This is who made all the money for these guys, is the white boys.
Absolutely. And there's there's a lot of acknowledgement.
It's well documented.
Oh yeah, it is. Absolutely. So I showed her Dear Mama, which she's like, oh, okay, this isn't bad. And it's not. It's a song about his, appreciation for his mom, who was a Black Panther and had this pretty incredible story. So, of course, a lot of the rest of the album, I was like, I don't know, man.
No, I'm gonna let my mom.
But I let her hear that I was listening to rap. But that album, like I said, continues. That there's themes in it. His next album is the one where he gets picked up by Death Row Records, and it's the one that is favored highly by many people. It's not my favorite album. I actually see a shift in his work, because then I started to listen to his older stuff, and I see a shift from more just an honest grappling with who he is, the environment he's grown up in, the struggles in the world that have shaped his community.
Sure.
Actually a lot of thoughts about how God factors into all that. On All Eyes on Me, the double disc by Death Row, it's like reveling in the aggression and the beef with other rappers, which maybe was all there, but it Dr. Dre now and Suge Knight are now influencing it, and they know how to capture the audience. They know they're like Taylor Swift,
right?
They know what's going to get people to listen,
right?
And And it felt to me like under death row, his career trajectory changed. His persona even started to like become fueled by what that, I don't, maybe it was his idea. I don't know. But you see a profound change right there. And then not too much longer after that, he's been shot in Las Vegas.
Right. And so this was how long ago then he was shot?
Whew, why am I...
It's probably
I'm like fuzzy on the
years.
Oh no, way longer than
years,
that. 20. Way longer. Hold on, let me see. I did have
the date.
1996, September 7th. Yep. And
the year I was married.
And he was 25 at the time. Yeah. So very short life. Very short.
And
influence.
Just recently, the reason that this is coming up is just recently there's been some stuff with the people who took him out.
Right. Well, and now it's all the buzz. So there was and here's the thing that's captured a lot of us over the years is the killer wasn't apprehended.
Right.
And so for those who had been kind of curious about, by this point, I mean, I remember this was still heavily on my mind in high school. I remember a ton of debates. Like I did enter into like a pretty diverse kind of hip hop oriented friend group in high school. We were the guys where there was like breakdancing and we would go out to shows and like breakdancing at lunchtime. And it was Northwest Tucson, but it was actually kind of a racially diverse group. And it was a unique group on campus that I ended up in. And it was a frequent discussion, like what happened? What really happened? Is there the conspiracy theories start to come in that Suge Knight, his producer, who was sitting next to him and wasn't hit by a bullet, had something to do with it. There were whispers that the rival artist who ends up being killed soon after, Notorious B.I.G. and Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, whatever you want to call him, who's the mogul behind Bad Boy Records, that he was actually involved. And that's all come back now. Like if you have a rap interest and the algorithms know that, there's articles about this all the time right now.
Okay.
There's still all this interest in what this was about. But interestingly, this dude, Keith D., who has been arrested now, it sounds like he wasn't the shooter, but he was the one who instructed the shooter. And then the question is, was he hired? Mm-hmm. But it seems like he's been admitting being there and being a part of it since day one.
Right.
And this is what interests me. Okay. This is the faith over breakfast layer that interests me is and speaking of memoirs, he wrote one recently. And so he's been claiming to be there. He's been claiming to be in the car for all these years.
In the car that drove by and shot, right?
Yeah. Yep. It was pretty evident there was an altercation at one of the casinos that involved him and some of his associates and a cousin, and there was an altercation that's on video up with Tupac and his crew. Yeah. And so he's been admitting it the whole time. In the memoir, he goes into like detail about this. And then after the memoir, they arrest him. It's almost as if the police go, well, we have to now. Like, you've spelled it out at this like publicly. Like, how do you not?
Right.
It's almost like there'd be this outrage. Like, how do you not arrest somebody when they're telling you over and over and putting in published format?
Right.
I was there. I was part of it. And so this was my question. So now it's time for Eric, the great theologian psychologist, to weigh in on this whole picture that I painted here. What is it?
Can you give me? Is there like the Andy Littleton Seminary that gives and
this
School
is
of Psychology?
Yes, this is it.
All right, I love it.
This is it. So what is it about the postmodern urban mind or
okay.
I mean,
yeah,
that wants to admit to murder? That tries over and over again to make sure I was there. And this is a thing in there's a sense of taking, It's almost like when nations say we, took down the plane that had the spy in it. Like they want you to know.
Yeah.
It's similar, and this happens. Either these killers are on the run, or they're like, "No, it was me.
Right.
I did it."
Right.
He's been doing that, and not being arrested for so long. It's like toward the end of his life, he just got so specific. There was no other choice. Why would you want to be arrested for murder?
Well, okay.
I have thoughts, but I want. I like.
Let's go with the theologian psychologist hat. We'll put it on. Though I don't wear hats. Okay. So in Matthew chapter 6, right, it starts with the idea of giving to the needy, and Jesus says, "Do not." When you are practicing your righteousness, right, do not do it so that you can be seen by other people.
But he didn't say unrighteousness.
Right, but there's a principle there, right?
Yeah.
That you are wanting to do a thing that is about who you are. So there's that reputation, and you want to be seen. We all want to be seen. We want to be known. And he's saying all of his life, he's sitting here doing like, I could be known as the one who had some kind of influence or was part of the killing of Tupac. And he can't hint at it and clue it. It's finally, he's like, I just want to be seen for this. I just want to be seen. And I think that is a driving factor of almost everything, is that we all feel invisible and we want to be seen. That's simple.
I was thinking about it, and it's like, there is something about celebrity culture. So, there's the new, I think it's a Capital One ad about Taylor Swift where she's showing up in all these scenes, and she's in an airport lounge, and people are like, "Oh, it's Taylor Swift," and you could even, if the ultimate prize you can win with your usage of this Capital One card is you might even get to meet Taylor Swift. And if you see Taylor Swift, if you're around Taylor, people want to get a picture with Taylor Swift and say, I was there. And then the kind of next level of that is like, I am an associate. And if that feels all off limits to you, like if you're just too small, too insignificant, and you're kind of jealous, you might start thinking, I want to harm this person. And and I think especially probably in cultures where there is this high level of competition. I mean, you talked about the masculine energy and all that stuff. Like, I think about this guy and Keith D. I'm sure there was some nooks and crannies where his rap name was known, but you and I had never heard of it, right?
Right.
We've heard of Tupac.
Right.
The jealousy, right? Like and what do you do with that? Well, in his case, he had a chance to be behind his death. Like, what significance to take out such a big, powerful figure, and then to not get recognized for it.
Right.
All these years. I mean, and a few people knew about it. If you really dug in, you kind of knew, but the general public didn't know.
Right.
And now they know his name. We're talking about it on the Faith Over Breakfast podcast.
Yeah. People are talking about. I didn't know his name until you informed me about him. But yeah, I mean, it's this, as they say, it's a story as old as time. As you started this, it's not any different.
Right.
It's just a different context.
Yeah.
Right. We want to be seen. We want to be known. We want to have importance. We want to be Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
We secretly want to be. Even the people who shy away from it and seem like they'd never want that. Deep down, we want some version of Taylor Swift. Because is the emptiness that's left from the garden of like, we're not seen and we got to just grasp and desperately pursue it. And when you just see it spilling out, it's an easy diagnosis. That's the problem, is it's not complicated, unfortunately.
It's not that complicated. It reminds me a little bit, but not really, of the movie Breach. Have you seen Breach?
No.
So this is a true story. A movie's been made. I'm sure there's books too, but it's an FBI agent who's the biggest mole or whatever they call it. Like the security. It's the largest security breach, I think, in the history of the FBI. I have
seen this movie.
Yeah.
Who's in it?
Oh, what's his name?
What's he look like?
Oh, no.
I've seen this
he
movie.
looks creepy. In the movie, great actors. It's a great. I'm blanking. You shouldn't have asked me.
Go
that.
check Breach out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Christopher something. Anyway.
Walken? No.
No.
Oh, Chris. Yeah, I know it.
No, maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, but the point is that when he's interviewed in the car, and I'm curious how accurate this is, they're kind of talking to him in the car, and they're assuming some things. They're assuming that he, there are various factors that were understandable. And at the end of it, he just says something about how if you had the opportunity to do this, wouldn't it be satisfying? And that's his, and they're kind of just unsettled by his answer. Like, he just did this to be just satisfied.
That's Christopher Cooper.
Cooper, yes.
Yeah. You had the first name right?
I did. Yeah. And you realize, in a sense, like, whoa, it's not even because he was desperate or he needed something or his life was being threatened or he wanted to be rich. It was just to know I mean something. Because he'd been, and for him, he'd always been in these lower level jobs, no window, nobody recognized his hard work. And he turned to being like, I need to do something significant. And that is what it's like, to this guy, it's like, yeah, this guy's a big figure on the streets, but it's the same as the little FBI agent I just want to be significant.
Yeah, I want people. Yeah, I want to have meaning. I want to have impact that seems to matter. Yeah, these are all just real things you and I talk about all day. So Jesus talks about.
Yeah.
It just plays itself out on different canvases.
So
the FBI agent or the low level rapper who needs meaning.
So how do pastors, people in churches, how are you seeing the same quest, or the same obsession, you could call it?
Well, I mean, think about it. I would argue in this particular highly social media oriented world where we're always putting ourselves out there,
kind of where everybody has this chance at celebrity.
Well, you and me, like, you post things to promote you. I post things to promote me or my church.
Sure.
Like, I was not really doing that when we planted the village.
Yeah.
I wasn't doing that before we planted the village. I wasn't even really, I mean, yes, I wanted some recognition and some kind of sense of impact in the world, but it was not like a possibility at my fingertips. I couldn't possibly become a YouTube star or possibly, get more people to know me except for the little group of people that I was pastoring and then their friends and my friends. Like, that was my social circle.
Yeah.
Now my social circle is people in Russia. Like, I mean, this podcast for a while, we used to joke.
The Japan.
Our biggest group of listeners were in Japan.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like, it's a weird kind of thing. And
it is. Well, and speaking of the memoirs, which is a topic I want to talk about later, but I actually was forgetting that it tied in with this one because he wrote a memoir. When I took a publishing class over the summer, if you don't have some kind of platform, they won't even look at you. Like, because
the class.
No. I'm saying even small publishers, if there's going to be any kind of promotion, they're going to have you do it through your channel. Mm-hmm. And so if you don't have a channel, you're not worth bothering with.
Right.
Unless you're like uberly famous for some reason.
Right.
Then that's the only way you can get away with that. But overall, the big thing is, like, you need to post something regularly, yada, 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 because once you get to the place of looking for a publisher, you have to. So it's interesting. This is a wild sequence, but what if this dude, Keith D, had a plan from his early 20s to get his family out of poverty, and that was to do something that was significant so that he could put out material that would actually get seen and noticed, like a book, so that even though he went to jail, his family would always have money.
Yeah.
That's actually possible.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make it right.
No.
But that is like, you're like, oh. I mean, he worked so hard. He wrote the book. He kept trying to get seen. It could be just about him and his personal significance, or it could be like, this is the way to dig out of this like life that I don't know.
Right.
Who knows? I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, these are all possibilities.
I mean, Tupac's family is very taken care of due to his story and his mystique.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder, like you were just, I mean, maybe we'll spend more time, or maybe it'll be a theme over the next few podcasts on memoirs, but you were telling me off air at some point in time that this is sort of the new thing to do, is to write memoirs.
Well, what I was saying is I heard Dr. Andrew Root, who I've been enjoying lately, say this, that in an age of secular mysticisms, and what is that? That would be an age in which people say, I'm spiritual but not religious.
Right.
It's a multiplicity of spiritual paths without a known God. It's Mars Hill, right?
Right.
In that kind of age,
not the church guys,
right?
The actual hill
in the Greek location,
in Athens.
Yeah.
Yes.
In that age, he was saying that the new spiritual leaders, that wasn't it. The mystics, the new mystics that people want to listen to,
right,
are writing memoirs.
Okay.
The trusted source, you're not looking at institutions, you're looking at people's stories where something meaningful happened. And if there's a spiritual event that's interesting, so people are buying memoir more than ever.
Right.
And the interesting thing in that is that I wrote one, kind of about my dad, as we've talked about here.
Right.
Or not about my dad, but I set out on a quest,
right,
due to the loss of my dad. And I'm thinking about writing another one about friendship, and I didn't have that thought in my mind, but all of a sudden I realized, whoa, maybe that's actually a really evangelistic thing to do, because a lot of people are talking about their spiritual experiences. So if yours is with Jesus, tell that story. Like, be like Paul on Mars Hill, who says, hey, you do have a lot of gods. And I'd like to show you the one true God. Like, what if you did that through compelling memoir?
Right.
It seems like memoir is on the rise,
yeah,
due to this secular mystical climate.
Right, and the fact that we just like to live in other people's stories. Mm-hmm. We like to put ourselves in other people's stories. We like to put ourselves in imaginary stories.
Yeah.
It helps us, again, go back to the sense of significance and meaning and sense-making of our life. If I hear your story, I can begin to make sense of my story.
Yeah. Yeah. And then how does God's story, as pastors, can it compete? Should it compete? How does it factor in?
Should it compete? I think it is the story.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, right.
I mean, I think that, like,
by compete, though, I mean, is that the right way of thinking about it?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the cool thing about having Jesus's story is that you get to have a true human experience if you're a follower of Jesus, in the sense that you have been made alive through the Spirit. So his narrative and active presence in your life is authoring alongside you.
And what does it mean that the biblical story is not just a story about God, but there's names and people and their stories and their struggles? Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Noah, David, Solomon, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Like, there are, Paul. They're people's stories. God's story comes through people's stories.
Yeah. Well, I think that, we have. So
Mary, Martha, I forgot the ladies, Deborah. Yeah.
Well, I think, like, when you grow up in the church, you begin to have what I would call a hermeneutic of story, right? Because people teach you the stories. When you read the Bible, you think it's stories.
Yeah.
As you get older, you have more an exegetical hermeneutic. Like,
a lot of people become sort of mini systematic theologians.
Yes, they do, and you are beginning to parse out meaning and trying to get a lot of different puzzle pieces together. Yeah. And so I actually think it's not the way we're called to do things. It doesn't mean that isn't vital, but I think if you lose the hermeneutic of story, that you're looking at a book that is stories.
Yeah.
Even Jesus's teachings are stories. Like, a good chunk of them are just parables.
Which we were doing Alpha right now, and the parables came up, and it was so in Alpha in the video, one of the guys said Jesus was the most normal, authentic person on the planet or something, and one of the guys was like, I don't feel that way, because normal people, when you ask them a question, don't tell you some seemingly unrelated parable like, should I go to the store? Well, there was once a young man with a wooden leg, That's not normal. Like, anyway.
Right. Well, he lived in a storytelling culture, so that's
we are distant from that.
Yeah. I mean, we're more like fact oriented.
Are we becoming more story oriented with the memoir thing?
I think we're shifting, and I think that's why we celebrate, movies and televisions. Like, this is our place of narrative. Like, we're trying to tell stories. I just think as Christians we have I'm like, wait, we have the greatest stories of which we are players in.
Yeah.
And I always feel like Christianity is now, in the time of the Holy Spirit, sort of like, whose line is this anyway?
Yeah.
Or whatever. That kind of a particular situation, and now you're living it out with all of these parameters and involvement, and you get to sort of act within those things. And I think that's a big.
Yeah.
But we're not great storytellers, because a lot of times what we do is we just want to tell each other the facts of things.
You give me the answer versus like, what does it look like to walk with Jesus and imagine? Like, what does it look like to imagine my way with Jesus through something?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. I went to, another reason I missed one of these was I went to a gathering of grant recipients who were reporting back in Vancouver. And one of the recipients did a storytelling experiment where they hosted it, and I believe it was for unbelieving friends in their community, but he framed it this way. You tell a story, and I'll tell, and then I'll share a Jesus story. And what he would do is they would tell any story they wanted to about their lives. And one of his observations is a lot of them, he worked with a lot of people with mental health issues. Many of them shared about their pets.
Yes.
High number. Yep. And he talked about how that's where they received acceptance, was with their pets. Which that'd be an interesting podcast.
There's a podcast
ding,
for
ding,
us.
ding. And then after they would share their story, he would retell one of Jesus's stories in a modern, with a modern imagination.
Mm-hmm.
And then and he would ask them questions about their story. They would ask him questions about his. And then he would say, by the way, if you'd like to know where this story was originally told and what it sounded like, let me know. And he said they always wanted to know. And so that was cool. That was cool to hear. But it just, to me, it proved that people found the stories of the Bible intriguing and wanted more.
Yeah.
And people are often not finding the facts intriguing and wanting more. What do we need to learn from this?
Well, and honestly, as somebody who is a student of Scripture, and I look at debates, it's one interesting, like, when the different big issues that we debate in Christianity, in Orthodoxy, is that one group is actually holding a story, and the other group is holding like a list of truths, and they're trying to mesh them together, because a lot of times in Scripture the humanness of how something's playing out, and what's being said in a very direct command or something is sometimes different, and so it's interesting the juxtaposition between those two in Scripture is that's where the debates lay. It's like, well, this is how that story played out, but this is what Paul says about this situation, and so you end up with conflict. So
that's really good. I could imagine a lot of, and it doesn't need to be like it's utterly one or the other. Like, the fact can be in the story, but it works out, plays out, gets applied very differently.
Well, even I think it's the story mindset, because I actually don't think the Greek mind was very story oriented. Yes, it had plays and all that kind of stuff. But if you think about, for instance, the Lord's Prayer, where it says, do not lead us into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one, a Jewish person has no problem with God leading them into temptation. That makes total and utter sense to them. They don't, because they understand a particular story about how God is moving to bring justice.
And there's been a leading from place to place in their journey. There's
it's connected to the story. For a Greek mind and even for a modern mind, we're like, wait, God can't tempt us. He can't. He's not inclined to be in any kind of evil. So therefore, he cannot tempt us with evil. So this doesn't line up. So we've got to look at this word temptation and try to parse it out. And then we've got to parse out lead, because these two things can't work. We need to explain this instead of just letting it.
And you sentence diagram it, and
right,
which is an interesting thing. So not having gone to college, I've now gone back to school, but I didn't go to college. I didn't do the basic English 101,
right?
And I felt like maybe I couldn't really be much of a minister because, John Piper would always diagram out sentences.
Right. In fact, you can go get his YouTube video if you want.
Yeah.
The diagramming of a Greek sentence.
And I'm actually not. I think there's probably a lot of value to.
I think so too.
Being able to do that, but that's not all there is to understanding what a text is about. Sometimes being able to hear it, just like hear it wash over you and go, how would it feel to hear that? What would it mean to be led? What is it when you're led? What's happening? Like there's a lot of value in that.
Right. Well, and I didn't expect this podcast to go this direction, but Bible study has become the parsing of the language, and not the experience of the story. And I think that's really hard for us modern people within the West to do, is to let a story change us and move us versus the parsing of something.
And as you say that, and I think over my years of ministry, one thing has been, and I think I've dealt with some struggle around this even as a leader. I don't see the facts changing people much.
No.
Like I've seen, just to be really like raw and thinking about some of our more painful times in ministry in like 2020, 2021, people weren't changed by, even if you found a indisputable fact, it didn't change anybody's mind. People still went their own separate ways, and some went, Christianity's dumb, or some went, no, your version's bad, mine's good. Right. But that fact didn't do it. And we tried a lot of things, but it seems like that when there's more of, I remember somewhere in there trying, I'd seen an episode of The Chosen. You and I talked about this. And I was thinking about, so what would it mean to follow Jesus with a group of people that weren't on the same page yet, but they were unified by Jesus? That type of thinking seems like it has more potential to shape a person. And the fact is in there. Mm-hmm. It is. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think, facts are like willpower when it comes to transformation. You might see the facts, you might believe the facts, you may choose to follow the facts, but they aren't going to last for long. Yeah. Willpower alone does not change you.
Yeah, it might get you down the road a little ways.
Yeah.
But the long-term transformation, yeah.
No, there has to be a relational connection. And this is not just in Christianity. This is like, you want to lose weight, you want to get muscular, you want to become whatever it is you want to become. A relationship has to be a big part of what's happening there. The relationship with the coach, or the relationship with your fellow teammates. Like, these are the things that move you forward.
Yeah. Oh, man. Absolutely. Yeah, I was Victor Wembanyama, the new really tall guy
I've watched,
on the San Antonio Spurs.
The man's got arms the length of, this is insane.
Isn't it wild? And I heard a little interview with him. There's probably a lot of stuff out there about his coach, about Greg Popovich. And he's a hard coach. But it seems like, this guy's like, I'm glad he's my coach because I know he cares. And you see him pulling him aside in between, somebody's shooting free throws and he's like, no, you do it this way, you do it this way. He's always giving him directives, but you get this sense that Victor Wembanyama knows he cares about him, knows he wants what's best for him. And so he can take these directives through the relationship And you're like, man, if he keeps on the right path and doesn't have a crazy injury, he's going to bulk up like Giannis and be insane. But that relationship, if you take that away,
and by the way, just as a note, he is already insane.
He had almost a 40-point game against the Suns last night.
Right.
I'm enjoying watching him. But what was I going to say? Oh, those facts all existed before.
Right.
Like how to play is accessible.
Mm-hmm.
He probably kind of knows it.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of that person who's walking with him going, hey, right there, you got to do it a little different. All right, get back out there, Like that personal layer is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Tupac,
Victor Wembanyama, Breach,
Bible study.
See?
You got it all in the Faith Over Breakfast.
It always comes together.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, man, thanks for hanging out. And remember, you can email us, faithoverbreakfast@gmail.com.
Yeah, I think they may have forgotten we exist. So,
yeah, whatever.
Hey, come on, guys.
Yeah, whatever. It's just letting you know you can.
Are you coming out with a new book?
I'm working on one with Rod.
Yes, I heard that.
Yeah. And so, it'll be called Limericks for Our Senseis.
Okay.
And it's
looking forward to that.
Yeah, no, it's fun. It's Rod's stories, so very story oriented. So basically, this is what it's become: is Rod likes to write the shorter stories.
Right.
I wanted to kind of cast a picture of the type of leadership development I've experienced with Rod and others have, you included. I should probably get some input from you on this.
Yeah, but I'm the one who's worked with him for the longest.
No, you're getting mentioned in it, and you're going to have to look at that. So, but
shouldn't I have permission?
That's what I'm trying to say right now. Is I'm not going to put it out there without you looking at that. But the concept is Rod's short stories are laying throughout the book, and I'm adding a little more of a narrative that helps tie them together.
Yeah. That's great.
And from somebody who kind of sat with him.
Yeah.
And I've heard these stories. So yeah, he tells the story, or maybe I enter with a little bit of commentary, then you hear his story, then I talk about how that's landed with us, or sometimes I go, yeah, I've been kind of skeptical of this over the years, actually. But it's proved true over time. And I did mention one time that I don't always agree with Rod, and he thinks I need to put more specifics about when I don't. So maybe you can add that. You can add those.
I'd be happy to add some stuff for you.
No, so but yeah, limericks for our senseis, and I'm excited.
You know how books have epilogues, or there's another thing, because I read a book where it had an epilogue, and then it had something that was beyond the epilogue, written by somebody else who didn't do the introduction.
Oh, interesting.
And it was like a response to the whole book itself.
Oh, cool.
So you could give me I'll just write 2 or 3 pages.
That'd be great.
Discrediting the whole book, and then it'll be good to go.
Yes, that's perfect. Well, that's what Rod did to me on my bivocational book. He writes this intro that's like, I don't think bivocationalism is right.
Nice.
But then he's like, but these guys are my heroes because we live in a broken world or something. And I was like, yeah, okay, let's put it in there. That's fine. It's probably good to have someone saying that and allow that voice to be there.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's great.
Well, limericks for our senseis.
I'm very excited. So when that book comes out, we'll do a promotional for it. We'll get you, if you can email in and do that kind of thing, like we did for the last book.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll give you free books.
Yeah.
Mail them to you in the what is it? What's the C word for the United States that doesn't include Hawaii and Alaska? Contiguous.
Continental?
Contiguous? No.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a contiguous.
Okay.
I don't know. United States. I don't know. It's a 48, the lower 48.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll mail it to the lower 48 for you.
Yeah, and I'll hand deliver to Hawaii.
Yeah.
So the
and we probably could hand deliver to Alaska. We give it to one of our many fishermen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Look, if you're still with us at this point, you really love us. So thank you for tuning in. faithoverbreakfast@gmail.com. Follow us on social media. You can download us on all the various platforms out there. There's probably a couple we're not on, but we're on most of them. So rate us. That means a lot. Thanks for tuning in. See you.
You've been listening to Faith Over Breakfast with Pastor Eric Siepen and Pastor Andy Littleton. Please share us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thank you.